Welcome to Live with Greg, or Live with Greg, depending on semantics.
Alright, so just off the bat, I'm going to say that you and I have a raw sense of humor. And if someone is potentially feeling emotionally fragile or potentially triggered by the raw and uncouth, they should turn this fucking episode off.
I think that's a great fucking idea. Hey, Denise, would you keep Coda in there and shut the door?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
All right, so I'm here with a dear friend, and it's rare that that's real when I say that. Usually that's got showbiz hype to it. No, that's not true. But yeah, you are a dear friend.
Mm-hmm.
When you send me a hug over the phone or Zoom, I feel it.
Yeah.
And also formerly my boss.
Yes, that's right.
That's how we met.
That's right. That was back in your Jesus days where you had the hair down to your butt, and we had to get a lot of people used to that look around the radio station.
And some never did.
No, and that's why they're gone.
Well, radio's gone.
It's true.
Leonard Nelson, ladies and gentlemen, Leonard Nelson.
And Greg Wilker, the finest guys and the best at what he does.
Which is absolutely nothing. All right, so is there anything on your mind that you'd like to talk about?
I think that once you start asking questions, we're going to probably not be able to stop.
Okay.
No, I'm an open book to you.
All right. Well, since this is Live with Greg, and part of the premise is the challenges and foibles for an individual to live with Greg.
Yes.
What story have you been keeping in your back pocket where behind the scenes you just had to put out a forest fire I had started and I never knew about it, but in that middle upper management meeting?
I think that the one that comes out that best describes you as a very innocent, very, I don't know what you'd call it. You just speak what's in your mind, Greg. And I think that the one that stood out to me was the first time we met a coworker that worked back on the East Coast, and he was a great guy. Oh, maybe you know this story. Great guy, and he had, I think, what's called a lazy eye.
Yeah.
So one of his eyes was not looking at you, and one was. And, I remember struggling with this, trying to figure out, looking at him, just trying to, like hit a spot
Yeah,
here.
because it wouldn't be the same, like it flipped back and forth, as I recall.
Right. And so this happened to you as the three of us were talking, and you very politely and innocently asked, which eye should I look at? And everything was just fine. He took that very well, and I think he gave you some direction. And since then, he has fixed that lazy eye. They were able to straighten it out, almost like cross-eyed. But yeah, I think that is a story that if you didn't know Greg, and you wanted a first impression or an impression of how he thinks and how rational he is, and just being a good guy, you just spoke the truth, and you never really talked down about anybody. You had a question, you asked them.
Well, get it out of the way, right? So
Yeah.
I can move on.
And you did, and as soon as let's change his name to Ed. As soon as Ed left, I know that at least three of us, you and Victor and myself, fell out laughing. But you weren't. You were laughing, but kind of like, well, what?
But was there ever an incident where you're in, let's call him Luke Skywalker, you're in that office with perhaps the Godfather, and something's happened in the department you're in charge of, and you're attempting to explain to them that it's really worth their while to keep me in that department despite this incident that's occurred?
Yes. Yes, the office I know well because I was down there quite a bit, answering lots of questions, but not necessarily about you. But I do know that office. I think and I'm not sure that this would have been an employment issue. And again, it was a very good interchange that you had with the Godfather about perhaps the radio group looking beyond just simply broadcasting radio, and that perhaps we could go into the motion picture business too. Now that took me by surprise because I had not heard that before. I was told by Luke that that this had come up, that this was a rather interesting thing for you to ask our visitor, the Godfather. And I shook my head and I said, well, yeah, that's Greg. That's Greg. Did he worry about it? No. A very innocent question about something that maybe he could sink his teeth into while also doing the radio gig.
And in hindsight, maybe it was a good idea.
I think it was for a lot of us. We're doing what? Radio? Okay, all right. Back to radio.
All right, so here's a question I was thinking about on the way over. Because you started off producing one of the top morning shows in a media that was on fire at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You then moved into management
Mm-hmm.
and became a director. And we all know how that turned out. What are your thoughts about corporations in general?
Corporations in general. Well, since you mentioned the radio business, it would sure be worth talking about where we've come from and where we seem to be going, and this idea of opening up the radio domain to corporate interests, or all about money, rather than what radio was originally set up to be in the public service. And that each station or each market, each area of radio stations had a certain amount of goodwill to put towards public relations or public service. And we had, from the time that I started there at the radio stations, well, heck, all the way up to when a change was made by a corporate purchase. Gimme Park Lai, very, very wonderful person who ran public service, who had dedicated time on weekends to bring in serious issues in the community and have roundtables and conversations about some things that were very important to the people that are listening to the radio broadcast. And that kind of all went up in smoke in the turn of deregulation, where it was okay to own more than 7 radio stations, 7 newspapers, 7 television stations. That all went up in smoke, and monopoly. Yeah, monopoly. That's the word.
Monopolizing.
Yeah, monopolizing by one major entity, telling more stations than just one market how to run their business, and that naturally evolved into the, let's call it the vanilla, adding the vanilla to what radio was, where it just became vanilla, like canned stuff coming from one program director in, let's say Atlanta, who is making decisions about all of the market stations from one corporate position, rather than letting the markets themselves run radio the best way they saw it in their region.
Do you think that's part of why radio's become a non-entity? And even though people in radio still will say, no, there's still a lot of validity to their audience and what they're doing. However, are you aware of what's going on in San Francisco with the Alice Morning Show?
No, not recently.
Or Odyssey itself.
Odyssey, yeah.
Yeah, so they declared bankruptcy.
They did.
Yeah.
This is news to me, folks.
Oh. Well, all right. So what you just said about the vanilla aspects of radio, has that been a large contributor to the decay of radio as a valid medium?
I think so. But you got to remember that the time radio was really big was at the beginning, when it was a new item, a new fascination. The shiny thing that everybody would go and listen to radio drama on stations. It was a brand new medium that we were all exposed to when this started happening. And in the growth and building these big stations in these different markets, I'm trying to say that these big sticks, known as transmitters, like KNBR, 50,000 watt non-directional clear channel station, which means it just shoots out 50K every direction, including out to sea. It's a huge, huge stick. And in that stick, if you only had, at a point where I came into the radio business, San Francisco had, I think, about 80 radio stations total, with San Jose and San Francisco.
That includes the college stations?
Good question. Yeah, I would think so. I would say, yeah, 80 stations. 80 stations that our population in the San Francisco Bay Area could choose from. So that kind of narrows down your choices. So you could listen to a radio station for personality, like KNBR at that time was a music / entertainment station.
KNBR?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I first came to work,
Frank and Mike were
that's
cornerstones of a music station?
That's right. Middle of the road.
Wow.
MOR radio.
Wow.
So when I joined Frank and Mike in the 80s, it was right on the turn. We were already contemplating changing Frank and Mike, the morning show, into all talk, all forward, front space listening versus background. So because we were discovering that listeners who were going to work at San Francisco from the East Bay or something like that, their listening habits were to listen for Frank and Mike to talk, and when they would talk, that would get laughs. That would be entertaining for the people in the car, especially in carpools. And when we'd put on a hit from Stevie Wonder, Chicago, all the way back to the Beatles, well, everybody turned down their dials, because that was just music. That's just filler. And so what we did in 1985, '85, when I first got there, is we flipped the station from no more music in the morning, and music would start at 10 o'clock with the afternoon jocks and into the evening. But for the first time on KNBR, we were trying a morning drive show with no music.
Were you producing when they flipped to all sports?
I was, and that was that was a big surprise to me, because when I signed on, I was signing on for the personalities, because I admired these guys so much and their talent of doing Good
Why'd you
Morning
look at
Shtick.
your watch? Oh, you got a call.
I just, pardon me while I shut him off. Where was I? What was the thought?
You were Dick Tracing.
Oh, it was Dick Tracy, that's
You were
right.
talking about you producing when they flipped to all
Oh, yeah,
sports.
yeah. It was on account of a new group taking over the stations in '89, Susquehanna Media.
Took over in '89.
Yeah, and before that it was NBC. And NBC was owned by GE. But NBC was getting out of the radio business, and by 1988, KNBR and several other stations were on the market because NBC wanted to divest themselves of the radio business.
Was KFOG part of the family?
During the NBC days, no. KFOG came in when we were formally purchased by Susquehanna.
So they purchased.
They already
They
owned
owned
KFOG, yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. So isn't that something? There you go. Put that in your pipe and smoke.
All right, so going back, what's your opinion of the corporate road, as it were? Partly why I ask is my experience with you as my boss was you were a very corporate person. You allowed us a lot of leeway, and I think you protected us to have that leeway. But part of your come to Jesus lunches, as they were because the corporate way needed to be tightened back up.
Yes. Everything. You bring back great memories, because I would step back and repeat what you just said about that entire time, where having a creative staff and coming from the creative side already as a producer of morning drive radio, I was all, I rolled up my sleeves and jumped in there with you, and we're all laughing and doing stuff that were borderline, we were getting told to, pump the brakes, because we may have been getting a little too out there on what we developed on our websites, all that other craziness. So you're right. To become a manager and to manage creative staff, that is a tough position to be in. This isn't. It's not a black and white, controller job or accounting or human resources or an operations manager. Those guys are puppets. They're just pushing down the stuff that they're hearing from the bosses above them. And I think that my position and several others within that radio group, we were tasked with that. Okay, take that input, take all that stuff that they're telling us that we should do. For instance, you needed to be there at 9 o'clock, by 9 o'clock every day. And if you weren't, I'm supposed to have you email me when you arrive, and that I see that you've arrived, and report that to human resources. That happened a couple of times in our department. Now, did you feel it? No, probably not, because it was just something that I knew would be a big frickin' wet blanket. A big frickin' wet blanket.
Well, part of it too was like when Kaboom's happening, like I'd be there all day shooting Kaboom, and then going into the office and editing something so it's there for the morning show, and I'd be there till like 4 in the morning.
That's right.
And there definitely is an aspect with the creative, like you don't punch a time card. You do what's necessary at the time that's
right.
necessary.
And you do it, again, staying on the theme of creative thinking, is you set your mind on a goal. How do I tell a story about? Kaboom. And you don't have an answer right then when you're asking yourself that, or you're talking with your colleagues. It's when your mind has been working on it for a while, you're unconscious, maybe it's overnight, and by 6 a.m. when you're jumping in the shower, you got it. You got the idea. Well, now, what do? Do you punch in a time clock and say, okay, so at 6:05 in the morning, I figured out this problem, so therefore, am I on the clock? Should I take that as time credit until a time where, I don't know, I'm driving to work and I'm not on the clock because I'm commuting? Oh, wait, but what if an idea comes while I'm on the road commuting into work?
But don't you think that creative aspect happens for everyone, including the head of the market and the head of the sales? Like, everyone has that creative process as a part of their...
Yes. Yeah. I'm clearly enhancing the role of somebody that is directed to be creative, and that's what they're getting paid for. Sure, Luke or the Godfather, I'm sure, worked out a lot of things at home and brought those things to work too. But again, I simply think of that as black and white stuff.
They also got a really nice car.
They got a nice car, yeah.
Nice house.
And a nice house.
One of my biggest regrets is when the Giants lost the World Series and I took down the KNBR website and put up that poem.
That's right. From the Ken
Casey,
Burns piece.
Well, and Casey
Baseball.
at bat.
Right,
yeah.
That's right.
And Isabel was like, F this,
Yeah.
put our site back up.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
right.
all these calls came in and emails flooded just for like the 2 hours that it was there.
That's right.
And if we had left that up the whole day, that would have been...
That would have made national news.
Yeah.
That would have got us some really good face.
Yeah. So how was it for you to be a creative and a creative manager of a very creative department, interacting with these stoic departments like sales and marketing that have decades of history of this is how things are done? And you're coming in with, it was called new media. Your department was the new media department.
That's right.
How was it for you personally to be interacting with these?
I thought that my boss, I reported to the general manager, Dwight Walker, and Dwight saw the connection long before I did, because the way morning drive radio is going and still in that position, it just wasn't as much fun for me because it became so sports intensive. And when I mentioned that to Dwight, and he spoke about this new thing called the website or the internet, and that I think he would be a guy that could interface between the talent of what radio is out there on the broadcast stick and what we will do eventually. We don't know what we're going to do actually, but we have this thing called the internet, and face and websites are coming up, and they're popping up in offices and in homes, and there's all this stuff that we need to explore, we need to work through. So it was Dwight that said, "You're the guy that could head this thing up," and I clearly went into that with what's a website? Because it took me a while to figure it out. But once I did, and I realized the potential of interacting between both on air and something that's interactive with a listener, then we're talking about a great connection. I apologize, Greg, but some of the some office staff up the stairs are making a little bit of noise. I'm sure they'll be quiet. Anyway, yeah. So that was a good move for me, and I got to give that credit to Dwight to see that was coming.
In my experience, we never created audience interaction to any viable degree while from the time I was there, which was around 2000, till 2006, when
2006, that was a magical year.
that's when Susquehanna sold.
To Cumulus Broadcasting.
Was it Cumulus? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Dick brothers.
Yeah, that's short for Dickie.
They were the heads, so they were the dickheads.
Yes, they were. In fact, we wrote a song, We Are the Dickheads.
Did we?
No. I'm thinking of a song called The Peckheads from Mike Peckner.
Yeah.
That goes back into the early KNBR days.
So am I wrong? Did we actually create audience interaction with the online assets of Susquehanna SF?
Yes. For instance, I think one of the biggest accomplishments was our FM station, 107.7 The Bone, actually taking a very well-known thing that happens in the sports world, March Madness, and they took that thing and built a whole shtick around hot-looking babes.
Yeah.
And what did we call it? I can't remember.
Well, the winner was
Bone
going to
Rock
be
Girl.
the Bone Rock was going to be for that year the Bone Rock Girl.
Yeah.
And be the hot chick of
Right.
at concerts and Bone
Yeah.
events.
It's kind of fun saying Bone.
But no, it wasn't Bone Rock Girl, but it was
107.7 The Bone. Help us out. If you know, please send Greg a text, email.
yeah, we'll put a link on it anyway.
Yeah.
So we did create audience.
Yes,
and it was sellable.
And that was
'Cause that's what we wanted.
blew out through the roof
Well.
in terms of sponsorships on the website, because all of the interaction of boneheads, bone listeners, go into the site and actually, starting to go after the personalities that they wanted to make the last four, final four, and then the two, and all this other good stuff. There was a whole bunch of activity where we were getting reports from our central servers back on the East Coast that, what are you doing? Cool it, calm down, because it was really impacting the flow of all of our stations going through that one pipe. And that was the Bone. Let's see, what did we do on KNBR?
We had the regular.
We had blogs. We were starting to let some of the air personalities write their own blog on KNBR's website.
Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind is the Bridge to Bridge run was a big deal because
right,
that had
right,
its
right.
own website.
That's right.
So,
And lots of pictures and great stuff from the event itself.
And that's what when you had been shown the door, as it were, and I stayed for 6 months to see how it was going to play out. And the day I knew I wanted to give notice was when there had to be a Bridge to Bridge website to meet the sponsors.
What was sold, right?
Right. And I had no direction, and I go in the morning, and there's supposed to be a website by the end of the day, and I made one.
Yeah.
And it was good, and it's public, and it's meeting all the needs.
Yeah.
And no one
You had no
there,
direction.
Well, no one there knew what I had done. There was no one to say, "Good job, Greg. I know what that took, and you did it." And I was like, you know what? It's time to go.
Right.
Because I realized Cumulus didn't have an online aspect to their
They
business
didn't have a
model.
vision. They didn't have the vision for online
Right.
or interactive work. Did they? So how did they? They did hire a couple more people into that department.
Not really. No, I think they let people go. Like I can remember maybe Scott moved on, because I remember part of my Goodbye Leonard video was walking through our.
He did a video to celebrate my departure out the door of the building.
I went into our what was the new media department,
right.
and it was just stacked with boxes like a maze.
Yes, that's
I just
right.
went
That's
through
right.
With the camera.
I do believe the Poseidon Adventure was
That was
in
a
that.
different one.
Oh, that was a different one?
Yeah, that was a video that I was happy with because I got paid to do that video.
Right.
Not that they knew they were paying me to do that video, but it was on the clock.
But it coming back to Dwight's initial pitch to me about not knowing what we have in store for us was great. He says, "I don't know what it is, but let's get ready. Let's get ready for this." And we were jumping in every direction, including the stellar work of our lead engineer, Kelly Parker.
Yeah.
I would play in a band with Kelly Park.
Okay.
Kelly Parker.
Yeah.
And we called him Pinky. Sorry about that, Kelly. The going to him to say, how can we now, this is way back at the beginning, how do we put that programming that we're putting out on the stick online? How do we, I think we're going to call it streaming. How are we going to stream a radio broadcast in there? And by gosh, Kelly went to his whiteboard and he started doing all this cool stuff and figuring out how things are going to get set up in order for us to keep commercials that are broadcast only on one side and the internet commercials on the other side. He built the relays, and we worked with our provider up in Washington, and we were showing that to the rest of the company. We're saying, this is how we're going to do it. I thought that was pretty darn cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, San Francisco was definite. That's why I think at that moment when I brought up movies, if they had said yes, it could have really blossomed into something.
Yeah.
Because San Francisco was leading. And anyway. All right, so what excites you today, 2024? What are you excited about? Besides being a sellout at the Bohemian Grove.
I don't know why you said that, but that's fine with me. I would say that the stuff that excites me now is artificial intelligence. Not to jump on that bandwagon.
No, that's great.
But I'm researching this stuff. I spent the last 8 years of my life with a high-tech content company where analysts would go out and talk to, influencers, developers, creators, and a whole bunch of other folks that in lesser roles with these big companies about technology, and so it became a lot of heebie stuff. But when we started to really look into AI as my end approach with this company, it was overwhelming. It was fascinating to think of how you put a system that can learn from itself and make decisions based on data out there in front of every industry. That's very cool. That's what excites me today.
So do you interact with ChatGPT?
Yes,
Do you
I
do your own experimenting with it?
Oh, yes, I do.
So what have you found out in the past month, let's say?
I found out that by simply putting in, this is the elementary stuff now. Hey, I need some bullet points for a meeting about Kubernetes and how they impact the migration of birds. Whatever. I would put in a few points and say specifically on the West Coast, and he hit the button, and all of a sudden it's just coming through all of this knowledge to describe what a Kubernetes really is, and that it probably wasn't impacting the bird migration and burr, 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 all
What's a
the things.
Kubernetes?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know. I've been saying that word for 8 years now, and
What is it?
it's a wrapper. It's a package around stuff.
Oh, that
high
was
tech.
plastic ring? No.
Sure, call it that. Yeah, plastic bag, whatever. And so that's a big deal.
Is that a real word?
Kubernetes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
All right, so
So that excites me. Yeah.
have you used AI for any personal insight about yourself? Like, have you had a life challenge and you take it to ChatGPT?
No,
No?
but that's a great idea.
Like, what if you say to it, are you still in touch with the gentleman who was a chaplain and kind of a mentor for you, sort of a life
Deacon Anderson.
deacon?
Deacon passed away tragically of Alzheimer's many years ago, but that was a mentor. That was a person that I'd have breakfast with once a month until he simply he couldn't do it. And he's a guy that he's a guy that would listen to me, and it was not judgmental, but we would talk through things, and always a good feeling of, wow, I just learned something more about myself by sitting here talking to Deacon.
So do you have one of those individuals now?
I probably have several.
Well,
Yeah.
is it because of your interaction with the band? Is that
Yeah, but not with, again, taking a step away from Chat GPT, but into mentors. You're familiar, we've spoken about the book Think and Be a Millionaire, or whatever that book was called.
Yeah.
And the mentors that you can pull up at some point and use them to set up your problem solving before you go to bed at night.
So you have that?
Yeah.
And you utilize that?
Oh, I do.
That's crazy. And it's working for you.
Yes. It's and Deacon is one of those.
He's
kids.
at your table.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Do you want to share some others, or do you want to keep it personal?
I would think that I have former professors in music that taught me a lot. Joel Leach from Cal State Northridge was an incredible band director, but through his ability to get everybody on the same team, just like you would in a project team from a corporation, and to do it in such a way where it was all meaningful. That's Joel. I have another history professor up in Sonoma that I actually made into a radio feature during the 80s on KNBR, Jim Rawls, where we had history lessons twice a week.
Mr. History.
Dr. History, the man who makes history fun. And there's a guy that it was such a smarty pants. I mean, gee, just and he had a good set of what's the word I'm looking for?
Testicles.
Yeah, sure, testicles.
Good set of testicles.
Sorry, Jim. And that perfect, professionally beard. But he again is one of those people at the table.
All right. So what has improvisation in jazz brought to you that serves you in regular life?
It's a very good question. I mean, all music to me is, well, with a couple of exceptions that
There's no exceptions.
you listen to, and
No, there's no exceptions.
Scotty Toast would put on.
There's no exceptions.
But for the most part, music is a very big deal in my life. But if you were to think about jazz versus written music, playing classical, legitimate music, all this other good
You
stuff.
just said legitimate music for classical?
Yeah, we say
You're
that.
out of the jazz world. You
Yeah.
just got fired.
But the key with jazz going back to your friends around the table when you're setting up your problem solving. With jazz, it's kind of, you're going into the same world of, let's see, how am I going to play these chords? How am I going to play this solo? And I can think fast, but if I close my eyes and I allow everything else in my unconscious or behind my conscious to get involved in the process of coming up with a melody, coming up with a cool jazz tune, that would be akin to bringing in a table full of your mentors to help you put things together overnight.
All right, so if you don't mind, I would say you're at a crossroads right now where you still want to earn a living.
Yes.
And you're finding yourself at a place in life where ageism is a big role in a new hire. It's a big challenge. So, from what you've learned with music improvisation and looking for that melody that sounds right, do you have that in you as you look at this challenge where you're feeling for the right answer that feels right?
Oh yes, yes, truly, because as you mentioned, ageism. Yeah, it's the not talked about. It's the stuff out there. Oh, yeah, and it's putting folks out to pasture before maybe they really have given all they can give. And so with the ageism and with this point in my life, I'm thinking, well, let's see. I just went through 8 years of making sure a couple of I won't call them boneheads because then we'd be talking about the bone again, but a couple of personalities that when we started in the high-tech business, they were just throwing stuff like word salad, throwing stuff out left and right. And I think the newest term now in a storytelling book I'm reading is turning into what's called content zombies, where there's so much content out there and nobody's really saying anything besides repeating graphs and statistics and all that other stuff. It's just mind-boring. It's just watching paint dry. So I just did 8 years of that, thinking that there's something here, but no, there really isn't. They're just trying to figure out a way to sell a little more time on the broadcast. Whereas now I'm thinking, okay, I did that, but now I really want to come back into music or something else that's highly creative, telling stories, which is quite different from listening to content zombies.
How often do you practice trombone?
Every day.
How long?
It generally goes, if I'm really pushed for time, maybe 20 minutes. But I've gone for a couple of hours when I have the time and I feel right. I've had some great sessions with a scholarly trombone player, Dr. John Brummel, who I played with in a couple of places. And he's got his PhD in music performance on trombone, of all things. So talk about being with somebody that's got a good mindset and talking about how to approach music maybe a little differently.
One of the knee-jerk responses I have to academics is it sucks the creative, infinite element of imagination out of something because it tries to put it into a box. That's
thou shalt do it this way.
Right, that's academics. But you're saying this gentleman you found not that.
No. Yeah, anybody have some youngsters that are taking trombone and they're half serious in the Bay Area, write Greg, and I'll make sure that you get in contact with Dr. John. He does private lessons, and he's put a lot of kids in the right place, not only on trombone, but tuba and baritone, euphonium, lower brass instruments. He's a great guy.
What piece right now are you really digging, getting your chops into and playing?
I just did a performance of, it was actually a tribute to a jazz club in New York called Birdland, and it was
It's a great piece.
Birdland was a song itself.
Yeah.
But and of course that was dedicated to the club where lots of big names. That's where they got their start. Your Freddie Hubbards, your
I know who's the drummer that had the porky pie hat.
Well,
This famous guy, big eyes.
now of course now I'm not seeing him, but I'm seeing Buddy Rich.
Okay.
I'm seeing Louis Bellson,
Yeah.
who just lit it up back in New York. Sax players, Birdland, named after
Coltrane.
Charlie Parker.
Coltrane was all there.
Yeah.
And then you bring in the Herbie Hancock
Yeah.
and Chick Corea.
Everybody who is anybody
Wasn't
played
even
Birdland.
who's the guy with the big cheeks? Wasn't he?
Dizzy Gillespie.
Dizzy Gillespie, yeah.
The big cheeks.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I just forgot his name.
So we did a whole bunch of tunes celebrating Birdland with all of these artists, and you mentioned the song Birdland. That was Weather Report's salute to Birdland.
They created that song, Birdland?
Yes.
Wow.
This was back in the
70s.
late 70s, 76,
Yes.
77,
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. Joe Zawinul was the writer of the tune. And Joe had been out with all kinds of different folks, and he just put this song Birdland on the map. And now you could hear arrangements. Some of the top arrangements are, for you old people, Manhattan Transfer. So it's a vocalese thing where they added lyrics to the song Birdland.
That's right.
And
Really, that was originally a weather report?
yeah.
Wow, damn. I don't
And how
know.
about Maynard Ferguson? He had a great arrangement of it where the trumpets would scream, and so did I just dropped the ball. The Birdland guy was. You're gonna kill me, Jazz World. Manhattan Transfer, Buddy Rich, Maynard Ferguson, and there was another one that was huge besides Weather Report. Anyway, so I'm feeling the afterglow of that concert, and I actually did some of the writing on that concert.
Nice.
So
Have you ever taken a piece like the opening piece for Miles Davis's Paris album he put out? And I can't remember the name of it, but that opening cut is brilliant. You ever take something like that and the trumpet line and
rearrange it.
for trombone?
All
and
everybody does it all
Really?
the time. And that's another fascinating
so
story.
what's a challenge in that?
The challenge is coming up with just a little bit different take. Like, okay, if we played Birdland this way. In fact, I just did a huge trombone ensemble this last week where one of the guys in the group, a crazy guy, arranged Birdland for some 15 trombones. Now that it got pretty outside, kind of like you and Scotty Toast with your music. But it's time to play. It's time to say, can I do this and respect the song and produce something that's cool, but it's still a salute to the original music.
All right, so as a very stoic, pasty white jazz player, Can
I
you
was
listen
wondering
to
where you were going to go with that.
Can you listen to someone like Sun Ra
Yes.
and appreciate what's going on in that orchestra?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
What do you hear in that where you're like, oh,
You're just, oh man, I don't know where to start. Jazz is the kind of music where it's coming from a deep place, and it is inspired by rhythm, where a group of a drummer and a drummer, a guitar, bass, keyboards, piano maybe are locking into some kind of a groove where we have chord changes, and they're starting to feel it. And the whole idea behind improvisation is, well, what do you feel at that precise moment? Do you want to be going up and doing some interesting things in this range, or do you want to be speaking a conversation, say, with the trumpet player, where you're saying a short line of, say, 4 bars, and you're passing it to the other guy to respond back to you? All spontaneous composition is what that is.
what about aspects of humanity that are the chaotic, the unknown, the lost, the shadow?
It's apparent everywhere in jazz, and jazz is such a personal music. It is such a if you lock into something that Miles Davis did, and you really feel it. I mean, you get into this great part of your head, and you're digging the music, and you know that you turn that off, and all of a sudden you listen to something else, Dinah Washington or some other legend, and it may not affect you as much as what you just went through with Miles. So it's very personal, and it's very, what else is going on in your brain at the moment you're experiencing jazz?
Has it allowed you to open up to other genres like gospel,
Yes.
country? Yeah.
Well, country, I have a saying about country music, and this may piss off, some of
Half of America.
Yeah, because I actually did a paper on country music while at San Francisco State at a time when KSAN, a Bay Area radio station, was
I
flipping
remember that.
from good acid rock into country.
That's when
music.
Garth Brooks and the Judds were
my
blowing
God.
up. Garth Brooks was the biggest musical phenomenon
Yeah.
during that time. That was like 80s, mid 80s, late 80s.
Early 80s.
Was it early
Yeah,
80s?
KSAN flipped around 82, 83.
Okay.
And so I had to write a paper. I chose the topic, the ascendancy of country music in radio formats, because that's where my interest was. And unbeknownst to me, the department chair who was teaching that class was a huge country music fan, and that she had relatives that she explained to me in red ink all over the last page that are really, really fine musicians.
You
And-
shit all over it, didn't you?
Pretty much. And in fact, I believe I took somebody else's quote, which I still use today, and that is, country music, comma, simple music for simple minds. Now, with that said, I've listened to country music, and I totally dig things about Willie Nelson, about, well, I don't have any country music artists.
Willie Nelson,
Yeah.
and okay, we're done with country.
And by the way, Willie did some great jazz ballads in one of his standards albums.
That's
in his
right, he
career.
did. That's what blew him up, actually. That album
That's
crossed him over.
He sang the shit out of that.
Yeah, he did.
And so,
Stardust.
oh yeah, Stardust
Seven.
Melodies.
That's, yeah.
Stardust Melody.
Is that what
yeah,
it was?
Yeah. Yeah, that's Willie. Anyway, so yeah, bringing it all back together, if we possibly could. Yeah, music has been a central character in my life. Whether it's the guy that's just admiring the crap out of players that are in the same band that are running circles around my skill set, and just going, oh boy, wow, what did you just do? And hearing that stuff or promoting it. As you know, I do pro bono work for the Monterey Jazz Festival. So for the last several years.
Decades.
Yeah.
I think you were doing that when we were working together. Yeah.
I'd go down and create video presentations for their arena. Again, because I just can't get enough of it. And I can't get enough about supporting jazz and supporting jazz education. Because as we all know, the arts are just going down the tube in terms of offerings in high school or middle school
or elementary school. Yeah.
It's like, whoa, can we rekindle this? Can we get it moving the other way? You should hear some of those kids, Greg, down at the Monterey Jazz Festival. They are passionate. They're killing it with lines, and they get to play with some monsters like Chris Bodie or now of course I'm going brain dead.
Because you're old.
Thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
This goes back to ageism and why it's hard to get a job.
Because they really don't want that in a client meeting. Right. So
there you go.
All right. Damn. I don't know. I think that's our money shot.
I think it is too.
Well, brother.
And like you mentioned at the beginning, you and I have been pals for a long time. And with all of the stuff that we harass each other about and our little idiosyncrasies, I just want you to know that you're close to me. And I hope that our friendship goes long, don't start crying, goes long into the future.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Yay.
All right, brother.
All right. Peace out.